KBBL, home of the babble.
Good evening, folks. Thanks for tuning in to KBBL, home of the Babble, and welcome to our show, Cut Through the Babble. I'm your humble host, Wes Monty. Our topic tonight, well, we're going to grab the scalpel and forceps and peel back the layers on the anatomy of a Toastmasters meeting. But rest assured, you will not need a medical degree to get through the show. We have a special guest here tonight to help us dissect this information with surgical precision. Let's give a babbling welcome to Aim Crier Toastmasters Club 4966 President, Aaron McDonald, CC ALB. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. Doing pretty well. Before we start cutting deep into this, I have a couple of questions that I'm sure our listeners would like a little bit of clarification on. The first one, the most obvious, would be, what is a Toastmaster?
What an excellent question. At the end of the day, a Toastmaster is really anyone who is seeking to expand their knowledge, their skills, and their confidence around the concepts of public speaking, leadership, and presentation. What Toastmasters are not is based on the idea of what you think a Toastmaster might be.
Well, that sounds great. And actually, it sounds like a very, very open avenue to both personal and professional growth. So it's definitely something that I think listeners would be very interested in. And my second question, of course, I said at the opening of our show, we wouldn't need an MD to get through it. But you have letters after your name, CC, ALB, and I've seen Toastmasters with EH1, DL2. Those all sound pretty official. What do those mean?
Well, those are actually indicators of someone's progress in the Toastmasters education program. Some of the designations like CC and ALB, they stand for Competent Communicator, Advanced Leader Bronze, Advanced Communicator Gold, and so on. These are from our legacy program. So people still use these designations to talk about what they accomplished. I know I didn't want to give that up, but those aren't designations we're using going forward. Now, Toastmasters embark on a pathway, and each pathway level, when they achieve it, they get the letters after their name of the pathway, such as engaging humor, EH, and the level they've just achieved, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And eventually, each Toastmaster will accomplish a full level.
Well, that sounds interesting, because it sounds as though not only does the program evolve with the learning individual, but the program itself seems to evolve with the needs of the organization in general.
I think so. We've done a lot to introduce the new Pathways program, and despite a few hiccups where some people who are used to the old program might have liked certain things, the new program is really accessible, and a lot of people are finding it valuable, especially for work-related development.
Perfect. Well, I think we've got scalpels ready, surgical gloves on, so let's jump right in, peel it back. And just as anything, best place to start is at the beginning. So can you tell us what's the first thing that people should know when they're planning to attend a Toastmasters meeting?
There are a few elements of protocol that we include in Toastmasters, and this is actually about building skills for the workplace, for other official duties that you might have to take part in. So we really encourage people to show up on time, and most of the members, you'll notice, show up about 10 minutes before the meeting starts. This is just a practice so that we can get comfortable before we get started. However, if someone happens to show up late, that's okay too. While we're in Zoom, our protocol is to just keep your camera off and your mic off when you enter the room if the meeting has already started. Quietly, you can turn on your camera, and when the Toastmaster is ready to take your introduction, they'll usually call on you. And you will always be greeted when you come to a Toastmasters meeting. Right now, we're operating on Zoom, because of course the pandemic. But if you are in person or on Zoom, there is a greeter assigned to every meeting to welcome you and say hi, and to make sure you don't have any questions that are unanswered.
So, if someone's a greeter, I guess that means that when you show up to a meeting and the greeter's doing their job, you should just shut up, right?
No, we welcome everybody to join into the conversation, especially just before the meeting as we're getting to know people. When we have guests or visitors, it's always a great opportunity to socialize.
Like, that sounds a lot less official and a little more social.
It can be both.
Excellent. And you, speaking of official, you do have a selection of roles. One that caught my interest is a sergeant at arms. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Could you tell us a little bit about that one?
Sergeant at arms comes from parliamentary practice. And in the Westminster system, I know this is all very detailed, but I know Kelsey's enjoying it. Because of parliamentary practice, and it came from the British system, which used to have the head of the government being the king or the queen. The sergeant at arms acts as the king or queen's representative when the king or queen can't be there to let them in. That's not quite right, but with the sergeant at arms role, and the way that we use it at Toastmasters is they are there to start the meeting on time, to introduce the first roles, and to generally get the meeting off to a good start. And this is a really important role, and it gets people used to the protocol aspect.
Well, excellent, excellent. There's nothing worse than stepping into a meeting and not knowing which foot to put forward first. So just to let our listeners know, we will have an opportunity for you to call in and do some question and answer. So please, if you're thinking of questions, the lines will be open in a little bit, and you can pose some questions to our surgeon here for the Anatomy of a Toastmasters meeting. But getting back to the surgery itself, and back to the official roles, there's a few more that seem quite formal. Could you go into a little bit of detail on some of those roles and how they lead in to a Toastmasters meeting?
We have a lot of small roles and then a few bigger roles. Some of the bigger roles are things like chair and Toastmaster, and also that sergeant at arms role can be pretty big. Some of these roles, especially the chair, is related to a business meeting and making sure that we conduct our business meeting in the official way so that our records are accurate. The Toastmaster is really the convener of the meeting. They're the ones that spent time in the background, making sure we had speakers, that we had a timer, that the meeting was going to run smoothly and successfully. And they are our guide through the entire Toastmasters meeting. And they play a really big role in creating the club culture and welcoming atmosphere that we want to create. We also have some smaller roles, though. I don't know if you want to hear about those.
Well, of course we do. Of course we do. One question I do have is, so I've joined, I'm now known as a Toastmaster. So I guess it's assumed that I'm going to immediately Toastmaster a meeting?
Definitely not. When someone joins, they're assigned a mentor, and they will work with that mentor to get them comfortable with all of the aspects of the meeting as well as the education program. When you sign up for your first role, you're usually encouraged to sign up for a small role like a counter or toast or maybe quizmaster. These are some roles that you can take on without too much preparation. You can participate in the meeting, but not have to take on too much responsibility when you're new. We like to encourage everyone to continuously improve. So by taking on a small role, you're going to build up to taking on those larger roles.
So you get to choose your progression. You're not dumped in head first. You have an opportunity to take a small role, gradually work your way up. And I assume that there's aspects of how you choose those roles on a per meeting basis. Is there a sign up process? Is there somebody come knock on your doors at the sergeant at arms?
No, the sergeant at arms doesn't knock on this door, but The Toastmaster of the meeting will reach out to individuals and encourage them to sign up for roles. That Toastmaster role changes every week. So you're not taking on the role of Toastmaster for a year or even a month. It's one meeting. And you might do that 2, maybe 3 times a year. Once that Toastmaster is set, they're going to start encouraging people to sign up for those smaller roles. And they're also going to be encouraging individuals to sign up to give a speech, because those are some really important components of our program.
Excellent. So we've touched on it multiple times over the last few questions. We've talked about these smaller roles. So could you give us a breakdown on some of the nitty gritty roles that are down there that for some of the aspiring Toastmasters or guests?
Absolutely. The counter counts our ums, uhs, ers, and filler words. The goal of this is to actually teach us where our gaps are and where we can improve. Our grammarian similarly monitors our use of language, both exceptional uses of grammar and vocabulary, but also poor uses where, again, we can improve. Our quiz master pays attention throughout the entire meeting, and then at the end tests our listening skills to see if we were listening throughout the meeting. They'll ask questions that were brought up. The answers will all have happened during the meeting. We also have a general evaluator role. Again, this person pays attention during the meeting. Their objective is to give the club members feedback at the end to make next meeting even better. Some clubs have really unique roles. This is one we've played with, but we don't have all the time, is a jokes master. Some clubs have a jokes master at every meeting. Instead, our club culture is to do dad jokes at the break, and we do a round robin rather than assigning the role.
Well, that sounds like a nice reprieve from what could potentially be a stressful meeting leading up to it, to have a break with a few laughs in the midst, just to set everybody back at ease for the remainder of the meeting.
Definitely.
So if you have new club members and they're nervous, how you'd mentioned mentorship obviously as a means to do it, but what other things, if they're taking on these roles, what's some other avenues that the club provides to help ease those nerves, to help lessen that stress and the intimidation of taking on some of these roles?
Well, we have opportunities for learning, like I said, your mentor, who's going to be a wealth of knowledge to introduce you to the club and our norms and how things work. Toastmasters International, once you've signed up with Toastmasters, you get to access a program called Basecamp. And this helps guide you through the education program. There's a lot of information, and if that's really overwhelming for someone, there's also workshops that are offered by our area, division, and Toastmasters International to teach you about the Pathways program. When we're looking for other skill building, our club also holds educationals. Some topics might include writing a better speech, improving your body language, or doing detailed research. And these educationals bring a lot of value to our members, and there's no extra cost for them.
Great. That would definitely help new members from being a little bit uneasy to take the plunge, shall we say. Now, of course, getting on from some of these smaller roles, I mean, this is Toastmasters, right? And the whole thing in a Toastmaster is to give a toast, give a speech. We haven't talked about speeches yet. Do you do speeches in Toastmasters?
Absolutely, we do speeches. And speeches are part of the education program, that Pathways program I mentioned a couple of times. At each project, for the most part, the member will be asked to create a speech and then deliver it. They have different objectives, and the content can really be up to the member. Anything from art to driving to something related to work to a hobby that you might have. These are all great pieces of subject matter for speeches. And we encourage new members to commit to giving their icebreaker speech. That's their very first speech within the first 3 months of joining. Now, that's not hard and fast, but we like them to get some momentum and take on the challenge of breaking the ice.
And that makes sense, obviously, because you're going to get to know them a little better, get a feel for what they're doing. So as you're getting a feel for what they're doing, how do they get a feel for if they're doing it right? I mean, I understand there's probably no hard and fast rule as to right or wrong, but there's got to be something that tells them that they did well or something they can improve on in a speech.
Definitely. We provide evaluation at a lot of steps in our process. First, if you give a speech, you're evaluated. For each speaker, there's an assigned member who will provide a written and verbal evaluation based on the project goals. So this means you might also want to include personal goals. Some people might want to improve their eye contact or their vocal variety. This can get shared with the evaluator in advance, and you can ask them to evaluate you on those skills as well. They'll provide that verbal report, and as well, we encourage the rest of the members to give you feedback privately using something called the sandwich method, where we include something positive, an area for improvement, and something that we really appreciated about the speech.
I like sandwiches.
Me too.
Okay, so I'm ready. I'm on the team. I'm in the meeting. Man, I don't want to put together you said these speeches are probably a little bit longer. I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready to put 5 minutes into something. Is there an opportunity for me to maybe stretch my muscles a little bit and just do a little bit of speaking?
We actually have a great way of practicing that, and we call it impromptu speaking or table topics. We do table topics pretty much every meeting. Sometimes we do a short version and sometimes we do an extended version. In both versions, speakers are asked to respond to a question that they've just heard in 1 to 2 minutes. And their goal is to give a mini speech off the cuff in just 1 to 2 minutes. This can really challenge your impromptu speaking skills, and it's incredibly valuable for things like cocktail parties or job interviews or, I don't know, first dates.
You know, those could come in very handy. There's always an opportunity to do impromptu speaking, and quite frankly, there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily that great at it. So getting that practice, stretching your muscles, to use another anatomical reference, is definitely an advantage, and certainly something that I think guests and prospective new members could be interested in. Our listeners out there, if you're thinking along those lines and you had any questions pertaining to what a table topic really entails, please remember our lines will be open in a bit. So we've covered speaking, and obviously there's an evaluation process that's involved in it. And you'd mentioned educationals at one point. Could you maybe delve into a little bit of what, say, how an educational could specifically help you in, say, the business world?
When we're presenting ourselves, people are receiving us in many ways, and oftentimes how we present ourselves can be giving the wrong message. One of the things that we learn in Toastmasters is how to be more articulate, how to consider our thoughts before we speak, and really refining the verbal language. And I think communication skills are fundamentally the most important skill sets in our contemporary environment. We're often moving very quickly, dealing with complex problems, and being able to communicate clearly and succinctly is a really critical skill in our business world right now. And I don't know very many job postings that don't require communication skills, both written and verbal. Toastmasters is a great place to practice that.
It's an excellent point. The business world is ever changing, especially in light of our trying times, dare we say. For example, you are doing your meetings over Zoom at the moment, and it's certainly something where learning how to enunciate and speak through the digital platform when you're doing a lot of meetings, you're doing a lot of interviews through the digital platform, I think could be extremely advantageous. If you're doing, for example, a business meeting through Zoom, do you learn certain aspects of, say, a business meeting protocol, rules of order, something along those lines that could give you a leg up when you're sitting in a conference room, virtual?
Have you ever heard of Robert's Rules of Order?
You know, I don't know if I have. Some of our listeners may not have. So let's touch base on it.
These are some areas of protocol that are used at condo board meetings, at nonprofit board meetings, and at the meetings of corporations. And they're, again, meeting etiquette and protocol that helps business proceed, reduces the opportunity for explosive conflict, and results ideally in a rational outcome that considers many perspectives. We use Robert's Rules of Order for our business meeting, so members do get used to using them, but it's in a very low risk environment. If you happen to mess up stating a motion, nobody's going to judge you, and there's lots of resources to help you learn how to do that.
Perfect, perfect, because rest assured, I would be the one to mess up. So if we're doing this, and we've talked about personal and professional, how do you make sure that your members are growing in their goals, making sure that they're attaining those goals?
Remember I mentioned the reports and that feedback cycle that we like to include in every meeting. When we give those reports, whether it's the counter or the grammarian or a more formal report like through an evaluation, you're going to get really valuable feedback at each meeting you participate in. If you're doing a role like Toastmaster or Table Topics Master, and you're looking for specific feedback as well, we encourage you to let club members know that you're looking for feedback privately. And this works really well on Zoom using the private chat feature.
Excellent. So you've done the speech, you've done the evaluation, we've even pushed in a business meeting, which doesn't sound quite as intimidating as it originally did on paper. Now you've reached the end of the meeting, you've got these smaller roles, but how do you know? You say they count certain use of language. How do we know? I assume there's a reporting process in that too.
They do. They track using a form, and it's all laid out so that the person has a guide as to what they're looking for, and includes everyone's name so that they can check off great uses of language and areas for improvement.
Awesome. Now, I know I have a tendency to perhaps, say things. So now I've successfully, in the course of one of your meetings, I've ummed and erred and awed my way through everything. And I'm being told that I'm doing this. Should I feel bad for having stepped into this meeting and just stumbling over myself, or?
Oh, no, never. Again, this is a safe space. I always like to say this is an opportunity, thinking of it like training wheels, where it's safe. You can make mistakes, you can try things out. I mean, heck, if you want to try practicing an accent, a Toastmasters club is a great place to do that without being judged. Now, I'm not going to try to do that now, but trust me, the club would be okay with it. The thing is that we do want to give you feedback, but if a guest or a new member, say, uses more than 5 ums, ers, and ahs while they're speaking, we're generally not going to call out 26. We'll probably just say you had more than 5. And that's enough feedback to let you know that you might want to start paying attention to your filler words, but not so much to challenge you to never want to speak again.
So falling back again to that continuous improvement and skill building, creating that awareness of where you may, quote unquote, fall short, and giving you that ability to roll with the punches and maybe make you a little more aware as you do use it. That's something I think I could probably use.
I think we can all use a little bit of that.
So now you've done the reports. We've had the counter, the grammarian, I believe you'd said, the quizmaster. They've all given some reports. We've run this meeting on time. We've completed the reports. And now, how do we know we did the meeting correctly? I think you'd mentioned something about a general evaluation.
That's right. That's the person that's been paying attention to all aspects of the meeting except for the evaluated portions. They're not paying attention to the speech because an evaluator is going to provide that. But they're paying attention to the pacing, the organization, how well prepared the Toastmaster was, if we were using our tools like our timer correctly, and also looking at things where we did exceptionally well. They're
Excellent.
going to give this final report at the end, and it's an opportunity for us to reflect on where we can improve for future meetings.
Excellent. So we've got our general evaluation. Now, I assume with all that we've fit in here, we got to be getting close to wrapping up that meeting. How do you close it out? What are the components to letting people know, okay, it's time to go home, folks?
Usually after the general evaluator wraps up their report, they'll return the lectern or the virtual lectern back to the Toastmaster, or in some cases, the Sergeant at Arms. At that point, the person at the lectern will announce that the meeting will adjourn soon, but they'll ask for announcements. And we'll also ask for feedback from our guests and visitors. This is also an opportunity for them to share their opinion on how welcoming we were, or if they might want to return. We also wrap up with a positive thought. This is called the thought of the day. Our counter prepares this and shares it with us at the end of the meeting, and then the meeting closes. And usually we either pack up or say goodnight on Zoom.
Excellent. So from the tip of the toes to the top of the head, that's more or less the anatomy of a Toastmasters meeting, ended with a nice daily affirmation. I'm going to open up our lines now. If anyone has a question for our guest, could you please raise your hand, and we'll get you in. Caller number one, we have Kelsey on the line. Kelsey, do you have a question for our guest?
Yes, thank you, Wes, and thank you, Aaron, for breaking down the anatomy of a Toastmasters meeting. You explained how the smaller roles are filled, that the Toastmaster reaches out to individuals to see if they would like to fill these roles, but how is the order of the Toastmaster determined?
That's an excellent question. We have club executive roles. Like myself, I'm the club president, and we also have a club VP of education. That VP of education is working in the background to sign up Toastmasters for future meetings, and also to help them set the theme of the meeting. So there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes between the meetings to make sure that we're prepared for future meetings as well.
Perfect. Fantastic. The lines are still open. If there's any further questions, I think we've got time for at least one more. If anyone has any questions for our guest, feel free to put your hand up. We'll give her a little bit of time here. In the meantime, while we're waiting to see if we have any other calls, Aaron, how can people find out more about Toastmasters and your club in specifics?
There's a couple of ways you can find out more about us. We're on Facebook and Instagram under Aim Crier Toastmasters. We also have a website. You can find us at aimcrier, that's AIMCRIER.toastmasterclubs, all one word, .org. Then if you'd like to find out more about our Toastmasters International program, you can check out the Toastmasters International website at www.toastmasters.org.
Excellent. I see there's nothing more on the line. And so it appears, we do have another late coming caller here. Caller number 2, Wendolyn, you're on the line.
Thank you. Can you tell me if every meeting has the same structure?
Yes. We actually don't have the same structure every meeting. We only have a business meeting once a month. On opposite weeks, we retain the structure, which includes the Toastmaster and all of those meeting roles as well as a speaker, but on alternating weeks, we might have an educational, or we would have extended table topics, or a business meeting, but we don't have all of those things in every week's meeting. So there is a bit of variety when you join us.
Excellent. But variety is the spice of life. So that looks like that's a wrap up for us. Thank you so much, Erin, for coming along. And again, check them out at aimcrier.toastmastersclubs.org or check them out on Facebook or Instagram. It's been great having you on the show. It's been great. Thank you to all our listeners. That's Cutting Through the Babble. I'm Wes Monty signing off. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you,